So, welcome to episode 14 of Life of Leadership in Lorain County. I'd love to thank my sponsors. First of all, Brian Jankowski over at BCT Alarm. They are your local service provider. A lot of cool technology. You can manage the security of your home or office from your cell phone. And then WOBL, WDLW, the local radio station, Gary and Renee Talut, they do a lot of work helping me out. It's a great local radio station. I love the music that they have. So check out them as well. Gold Country and Cool Cat Oldies. So I'd like to introduce to you the guest that I have today. And his name is Bob Bove. Bob, I thought maybe when the music was playing, I'd see you, keeping the beat with your drumsticks or something.
Well, speaking of cool cats, man, how you doing?
I am doing real good. You look a lot cooler than me, though. You've got the nice locks. I've got nothing up here.
Yeah, hey. Oh, wow. Good to see you, though, man. Thanks for having me on this. Very humble to be here. Looking forward to our conversation.
Oh, so am I. So Bob and I go back a few years, and we've got a pretty good relationship. Bob, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about the business that you run? We'll give you an opportunity to talk about that.
Yeah, we run a wealth management firm that is called the 4-8 Group. Tagline is Beyond Wealth. We focus on a lot of things besides money management. We focus on something that's called return on life, making sure that we have a high return on life along with our high return on investment. Because after all, Bob, as you know, life is about life. It's not just about money. So got a nice firm, been in business for 22 years, worked with a lot of clients in the Lorain County area and all across the United States, basically.
Yeah, I like how you put it out there. Life is about life. And I know because I've seen you in action, you have people ask you, are you a financial advisor or are you a life coach, right?
Yeah. I mean, because I've been, as you'll find out through this interview, I've been very fortunate to be part of some really, really interesting groups that, redefine the definition of success, and it all has to deal with having meaning and authentic relationships. And, I'm a slow learner. So it took me a while to understand that, high return on life is something that is going to benefit me way, way more than a high return on my investments.
Yeah, one thing that I always heard you talk about, and I think it's important, and I think there might be some people listening to this that need to hear this. You talk about living life in the hamster wheel. Why don't you refresh my memory about that story?
Yeah, I think we can all relate to that. I know I was on it for a very long part of my life. And we've got a cool little PowerPoint screen that shows a human running on a hamster wheel, chasing a dollar bill. And it seems like for many of us that I know for myself, as soon as I got out of college, I mean, that was foremost. How am I going to make a living? And how am I going to afford, a nice house, a nice car, a family? You have a family, and how am I going to pay for, raising my family? How am I going to then afford their college education? Then how am I going to afford? It's just this constant, running on this treadmill, chasing that dollar, and before you know it, life has passed you by. And we describe a high return on life as having using money as a tool, as a sail, basically, to get you and navigate you to where you want to go in life. And in your life and your purpose and what we call desirement is totally different than everybody else's. And so often we're always focusing on just the money part of it. We tell our clients, you got to put yourself in the center and just use money for what it is. We define something called desirement. Our industry is terrible at focusing people on getting to that point where they can retire, sit around and do nothing. And we don't like that term because there's a lot of studies out there that shows that getting to that point isn't healthy. And we define desirement as having enough purpose to get your butt out of bed at night and enough wealth to sleep. And that's what it's all about. It's, Bob, your desirement is going to be different than my desirement, and ours is going to be different than everybody else's. And I think one of the things I know, I forget the name of the college professor at Harvard, he tells his class that, look, you're about to graduate. This may be the only time that you have in your life to figure out what your purpose is. Because as soon as you graduate, you're going to get a job, you're going to be working 60, 70 hours a week, you're going to have a family, you're going to have a mortgage, you're going to have college education to pay for, and you're not going to have a lot of time to figure out what your true purpose in life is. So, I think that's what's really missing in a lot of people. What is my purpose? Why am I here? What am I doing all of this for?
Yeah, I like talking about higher purpose all the time, right? I try to help people identify that they're individuals, that they're the only ones that can do what they can do, right? It doesn't have to necessarily need to be a spiritual thing, but even if you're a person that's not a spiritual person, you should identify the fact that you have gifts, skills, perspectives that nobody else in the world has.
Right. And I think, I was preparing for this call today, and I couldn't find it, but there is a Bible verse that basically says something about identifying what your talent is and running your race, running the race that, God gave you this certain talent, and just stay in your lane. So many of us, me included, I wasn't staying in my lane because it took me a long time to figure out what my purpose was. It was always right there in front of me. I mean, from a very young age, I was a problem solver. And what do you mean you were a problem solver? I worked for Louis Combs. It was my first job when I was probably in the 9th grade. And it gave me the skill to relate to people, and they had a problem. Hey, what am I going to wear out tonight? Or I need an outfit to do this or do that. And that's what we all do. If you own a business, you're in sales, right? You're in a relationship business, and all we're doing is we're solving problems for people. So I learned that skill, and it took me a long time to figure out that, hey, that's what I'm good at. So stay in that lane.
Yeah, that's such a difficult thing to do. I coach a couple of local businesses, and we've got with one business in particular. Every time I go and visit them, I always have to have that conversation. Stay in your lane. This is your job. Your job is sales. Do sales. Don't worry about the fact that somebody is on the floor not doing what they're not supposed to do. That's somebody else's. That's the operations guy. Stay in your lane. I love that.
Amen.
You used to talk about too, and maybe you remember the ages, but you used to say that, we used to talk about wealthy businessmen, because that's kind of the conversation that we had. And you used to always say that, people are running to that finish line. They have as much money as they're ever going to need, but they look behind them and nobody's there.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a problem. And that's, I am very fortunate to be part of a group that I think I'm part of, called Path North. And Path North, there's guys in this group. There's probably, men and women in this group. There's maybe 200 of us. People like Steve Case from AOL, and Wayne Huizinga Jr. and Stan Smith from Wimbledon, and the CEO of Starbucks. And these extremely accomplished people. And again, Path North's mission statement is broadening the definition of success to include meaning and authentic relationships. And a lot of us, the reason that this group was put together is because you get to some point and you look back, like you said, and what did it cost me? I'll share an example. I just got back from their annual event, and we had a conversation around the table, and the topic that we had to talk about, on a scale of 1 to 10, where's your happiness and meaning at? And one of the gentlemen at the table had just sold his business, oil and gas, a couple houses in California, one in Austin. He's 66 years old, my age. And you could tell he was very uncomfortable. But one of the things that Path North does is it gives us all a safe space to talk about these types of things that are really important in our lives. And he said, I got to tell you guys, I retired in 2020, right? Right before COVID. And on a scale of 1 to 10 of meaning and happiness, it may be 3. And he shocked the heck out of all of us and said, I may not, this might not sound like a good thing for me to share, but sometimes I'll close my eyes at night when I go to bed and I think to myself, if I don't wake up, I don't care. Now, how sad is that? Here's a guy that's got all the money in the world. He lived the American dream and he sold his business and his whole identity was tied to his business. And that's why we, and that conversation happens a lot in that group. It just amazes me. So we tie our identity, our purpose to our business and who we are and who people think we are, right? And we come to the end of the road, we plan for everything, we plan for the money, right? But we didn't plan for the return on life. What am I going to shift to now that's going to get my ass out of bed in the morning, that I have purpose and meaning in my life? So the money, it doesn't mean anything. There's a term called marginal utility. And marginal utility is, there was a study out there that said, when you get to an income stream of about $70,000 to $80,000 a year, okay, your happiness doesn't increase anymore from that point in time. Marginal utility can be used in a lot of examples, but I found that to be extremely interesting.
Yeah, how sad is that to get to a point in your life where you have no purpose, you have no desire to get out of bed in the morning? I can't imagine that. I can't see that.
Yeah, it's prevalent. I mean, it's out there. And again, that's why gentleman Doug Holliday formed this group. You've heard the term, it gets lonely at the top. Well, when you're at the top, it's extremely lonely. And if you don't put into practice things that are going to help you thrive in life, not just survive, and do the things that I've been taught to do, so that my whole goal is I'll never quit working, because I love what I do. This is what gives me meaning and purpose. And if that time does come, I have plans, and I've talked about these plans with you, that I know. I mean, I always want to impact other people, and I'm impacting people in the way we manage money, the way we talk about return on life, and I was impacting people when I was picking out clothes for them when I was in the 8th or 9th grade, right? So, but it's something that, again, the whole return on life, the whole desirement, we coach our clients to think about every day's a Saturday. Every day's a Saturday, it could turn into a bad thing.
Yeah, I'm thinking that I coach track and field, and we had a big event planned for this Saturday. I'm planning to leave the house at 7:00 in the morning, spend all day at the track meet, and get home maybe at 6:00 at night. And they canceled it because it might snow. And I'm so upset about now. What am I going to do? Because honestly, I don't like Saturdays.
Yeah,
it's for me, it's not really, and I know for you either. It's not really a day off, but we still have to find stuff to do. And so exactly, every day's a Saturday.
Yeah.
So you talked about Louis Cones. Now, did you work?
Yeah, I think if I heard your question, you sort of froze up there for a second. I worked at Louis Cones in what, Bob?
Or was it the one at Midway Mall or one on Broadway?
It was the one on Broadway, and then I expanded my horizons and then went to work for Diamonds Menswear in the mall at the opposite end of Louis Cones, and then ended up at a company called the Pants Scene in the Amherst Plaza, which was a blast. I was in high school at the time, and we just had a really good time there.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about your background, where you grew up. I mean,
Yeah, so I was actually born in Fort Hood, Texas, and grew up in Lorain. My dad was in the Army, obviously, and learned my relationship skills at a young age at those clothing stores. Went to Bowling Green without any idea really what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to make money. And interesting story that I remember like it was yesterday. I had the opportunity to work for Mr. Campana in his back shop during the summers. And the summer before I went to high school, I finally mustered up enough courage to ask Mr. Campana, the Mr. Campana, what do I need to do to be successful? And I'll never forget that day. It was like yesterday. I know exactly which way I was standing. It was like 5:30, 5:45. He just got done working. I was in the back shop. We're outside. I was looking toward the northwest. The sun was shining down on him. And this little 5'6" guy, to me, looked like he was 7 foot tall, right? And I said, so Mr. Campana, I'm going to college. What do I need to do to be successful? And Bob, I was looking for an answer like, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be an engineer, do this, do that, right? And he said to me, kid, he called everybody kid. He said, kid, you got to do what you love. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I love to party right now. I'll go home and tell my mom and dad I'm going to party for the rest of my life. I'm like, what does he mean by that? And then the second thing he said was, you have to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. I said, I can do that. I'm a BC student, man. I'm going to surround myself. And you know what? I built my business on surrounding myself with people that are smarter than me. And as I went through these different phases in my career, I was always in sales. I ended up being a national sales manager for Mr. Campana. And I still hadn't found my purpose. I didn't feel like I was really doing anything. And he knew that. And I told him that, and Randy Bevins at the time sharing with me the impact that I can have on other people's lives and in financial planning. And I said to Randy, I can't pick stocks. I said, my first interview was with Morgan Stanley. I didn't even get the interview. I failed the aptitude test before I even got the chance to get the interview. I said, he goes, no, it's different. You don't need, he says, look, you know a lot of people, you got a good reputation. I know how much you want to help people. And that was 22 years ago. And so look how things come full circle. The type of management philosophy that we practice and the evidence says you should practice to have a successful investment experience is you don't have to know how to pick and choose stocks. It's a disadvantage to try to time the market and so on and so forth. And so I built a really good practice. Now we've got a nice team. You were there for a little while. And lo and behold, I've still surrounded myself with people that are smarter than me. And guess what? I'm loving what I'm doing. And so that gives you a little bit of background on how I got to where I am today, I guess.
The cool thing is out of the 14 interviews that I've done so far, I think that about half of the people mentioned Mr. Campana, Patsy Campana.
Yeah,
it's what a legacy he's put down in this community.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. So then you went on to school. Where did you go? What did you study?
Yes, I went to Bowling Green. I studied statistics and marketing. Got my BS degree in that, Bachelor's of Science degree, or BA degree in that. And then, like I said, I went to various different sales positions. And when I married my wife and met her grandmother, and even while we were first married, she said, God, that guy's always changing jobs. How come we can't hold down a job? Her grandmother worked like a lot of them back then, worked at the same place for her whole career. But I always moved up and I tried to do something different, and I always wanted to learn. And I knew at some point in time, while I was spending my last years at Campana's, that I wanted to own my own business, and I wanted to do something that I felt would really make a difference in people's lives. And that's how I started the 4-8 group.
So here's a question. As you're talking about this, I'm thinking, right? And see if you're of the same mindset as I am. We have people that are business owners. They own businesses, all right, and they go out and they fumble their way and they follow their gut and they go out and they do things. But then you have these people that are entrepreneurs, all right, where they're process driven and they go out and build these wonderful empires, right? So you've got relationships with a lot of great entrepreneurs in Lorain County, right? And I'm assuming you've got some clients that are business owners, right? Without mentioning any names, why do you think, or are the entrepreneurs more successful financially, more successful business-wise, more successful with hiring and keep the right people, or is am I crazy?
So the question is, why are people more successful than others?
Sure. I guess.
No. So explain the question to me again.
So we've got business owners and we have entrepreneurs, right?
Okay.
In my opinion, two different types of people. You're an entrepreneur. You have a business. You have process in place. You follow the process. Your clients go through. You have meetings. You actually work with a coach that helps you with your process, right?
Correct.
Then we take a look at Simplified, right? There's a process. They have a process there, but then you also have businesses that probably don't have processes, just an individual going out and banging the hammer every day. Would you say that entrepreneurs, people that have processes in place, are more successful than people that are just going out and running a business on a daily basis?
Again, it depends on how you define success. And I believe that, yes, if you've got the processes in place, and more importantly, I think it goes back to surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you. I mean, I am always on a quest to improve my processes. I mean, we just had a meeting with the team yesterday. I'm like, what can I do better so that you guys, can do your job better? What am I not doing? And not that they weren't doing anything wrong, right? It's just, what can I do to help everything process even more efficiently than it is now? And one of the reasons why I joined this elite wealth management mastermind is because I'm always on a quest to learn. I don't think that learning process ever stops. And I want to become a better version of myself so that I can be a better provider to my clients. And so I think as an entrepreneur, you have to, it's just, I say we got to, talk to people that have already walked the path that you're about to walk, and just be humble enough to say that, hey, I'm not the smartest one in the room. And if I am, I get the hell out. And that goes back, when Mr. Campana said that to me, I think who originally said that was Confucius. So getting back to your question, a lot of business owners do things because they love what they do, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And a lot of them struggle because they don't have the processes in place. And being a business owner is more than, walking the lane that your passion is in and that your talents are in. You just take a home builder, for example, right? He loves to build homes. He hates the business side of it, right? I love what I do. I'm not a very good businessman, okay? The business side of it frustrates the heck out of me. So I've hired people to do what I'm not good at doing. And I think that's the difference between an entrepreneur and a business person, is understanding that, you need to have these processes in place in order to have things running smoothly. And again, it all depends, what is your definition of success? I mean, I know advisors that are, in their own shop and it's just them and their assistant. And if they're happy and that's, their passion, so be it.
All right. So that was a nice introduction. We've been talking for about 25 minutes, but as you and I talked, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on, and you, just so everybody knows, Bob was reluctant to come on, but I said to him, the whole thought process, the whole idea behind the Stoics, right? So we've had 3 or 4 people on the podcast that talked about the Stoics. You're the one, Bob, who pretty much made me aware of and taught me about the Stoics. So kind of a cool thing, as I was preparing for this, I found out that oh my gosh, I can't remember the guy's name now. See, that's what happens when you get old. I'll remember the name. If not, I'll Google it while you're talking. Anyhow, so you do like a morning, part of your morning routine is to take a look at some of the Stoics. Give me some of your thoughts about Stoics and why you feel it's important to what you do.
Well, I think it's important for what anybody does. And the first thing about Stoicism is, taking time for yourself, is taking some safe time for yourself and just sitting around and reflecting. Socrates said a life unexamined is a life not living. And so for me, and for a lot of business owners, if I'm sitting around not doing anything, I think I'm being unproductive. And the problem is that, we have to be aware of the barrenness of a busy life, because if we don't give ourselves time for ourselves, and for me, it's in the morning, for me to take quiet time, for me to learn lessons from these great Stoics, from Marcus Aurelius to Seneca to Epictetus to Socrates. These guys are all talking amazingly 2,000 years ago about the same problems that we face today. And what's interesting is Marcus Aurelius, his books have been published, his readings, meditations. When you read them, it's like he's writing this to you, but in actuality, he was writing these in his journal to himself. And so by practicing Stoicism, one of the most important things about Stoicism is being present and having the wisdom to understand that we can only control what we can control. And we should only not worry, but we should only focus on those things. Having the wisdom to do that, having the wisdom to say, I'm talking with Bob Markovich right now, and this is where I'm at. And I'm so grateful that I have the opportunity to do that. And so Stoicism has taught me to quiet things down, not to worry. Now, it's a lot easier said than done. And, it's like working out. I'm not going to become, this great Stoic, or, I'm not going to ever stop, completely worrying. I mean, I do have my moments, but, it's just like working out, where I've been doing this now for 5 or 6 years. And a lot of people say, well, you don't have any kids and it's easier for you to find that quiet time. We can always find quiet time. And you have to find quiet time. Because if you don't find quiet time, if you don't have time to be by yourself, to reflect on what's going on, and I don't look at myself as a creative person, but it's amazing the types of ideas that come to me when I'm sitting in this chair back here, in this little office, from, anywhere from 6:45 to 7:45 or 7 to 8 in the morning. This is Bob Bove's time. And this is when I'm getting refreshed. I used to just rush out of here, be on the phone as soon as I got in my car, and 100 miles an hour, do that till 6 o'clock, come home, work out, get up, do the same thing. And again, it's that whole thing of, well, geez, if I'm not doing anything, I'm being unproductive. You'll be amazed at how productive you will be by taking quiet time for yourself.
Yeah. So you mentioned Seneca. So what I saw as I was doing some research this week is that Seneca and Jesus Christ were walking this earth about the same time. And there is some evidence in the Apocrypha that Paul and Seneca actually traded letters together. How crazy is that? Have you seen that? Do you know anything about that?
No, that's interesting. No, I did not know that. I know that Seneca and Christ was born in the same year. And there is a lot of things very, very similar to what Christ was preaching and what Stoicism is all about. A ton of similarities. So.
So then the number one thing that you've learned from Stoicism is that the quiet time in the morning and being mindful and taking care of your personal time.
Yeah, I mean, the four virtues of Stoicism is wisdom, knowing, things that are out of your control. Why worry about it? Courage, temperance, don't do a lot so that you can accomplish a lot. And then also justice, making sure that you're out doing things for the betterment of other people. Because you can have wisdom or you can have courage, but if it's all for yourself, it doesn't matter. And so being present is the thing. And, there's trying to control things. I mean, as human beings, we don't like unpredictability. We don't like change, but I think we have to embrace it because life is always changing. Our bodies, our minds, the world around us. And so we have to understand that those things out of our control, a lot of things that, hey, you might not like who the president is, right? Or you may not like inflation or what is ever going, but you can't let that bother you. It's how are you going to react? The only thing you can control is how are you going to react to that person that cut you off on the street today. It's the only thing you can control.
Yeah, it's I've seen other places too where these Stoics, they would put themselves into uncomfortable positions just in case they ever made it to an uncomfortable position, they'd know how to survive.
Exactly. Or they'll think about, the loss of their child or whatever. No one would. Why would I want to think about that? So that they can, better handle that. Because at some point in time, the people that don't believe that Christ existed, there's that one passage in the Bible, right? You will have troubles in this life. Who of us haven't had troubles, right? And again, how are you going to react to those troubles? The other thing I learned too about Stoicism is to, like I said, being and understanding who you are. And more importantly, being your authentic self. Be Bob Markovich. Don't try to be anybody else. Everybody else is taken. So be yourself and appreciate who you are. Have your own inner. I'm old too. I'm looking for a word. Some inner accountability, but I know who Bob Bove is, and for a long time, I didn't. I was trying to be everybody else. There's a saying out there that, and Stoicism talks about this too, is that comparison is the thief of joy. We always want to be that other advisor out there that has more assets than me or has a bigger client than what I have. And so I think Stoicism has taught me to love myself and to appreciate who I am. Don't try to be anybody else but Bob Bove. There's a quote by E.E. Cummings. I think E.E. Cummings was born in 1894 and he died in 1962. And so think about that, what I'm about to tell you. And I got this quote written right here next to me. It says, so he had to write this sometime before he died, obviously in 1950s or whatever, to be nobody but yourself in a world that is doing everything in its power to make you like everyone else is the greatest battle that every human being can fight and never stop fighting. But yet, think about that. That's before social media, dude. That's before, he wrote that probably in the 1950s.
So you broke up when you were giving us his name. Who wrote that?
E.E. Cummings. The biggest battle that we'll ever fight and that we'll always have to fight is that we live in a world that's constantly trying to make us be somebody other than ourselves. And that's a battle that we'll always have to fight. And it goes back to this whole comparison thing and being able to, understand who you are and just be yourself. Don't worry about what other people think.
Yeah, and again, we've talked, or that I coach athletes, and one of the most difficult thing that I have to do is help these kids understand that they cannot compare themselves with anybody else, and that if so if I've got a kid, his goal is to win the state championship in disc this year. And, and when he said that, some kids kind of made some crude remarks. And my comment to him was, look, it's none of your business what their opinion is. Right. And that's the only way that I can get in my mindset. It's none of my business what this person thinks about me. It's none of my business why that person doesn't like me. Right. It's none of my business. I can't make my life in alignment to become somebody that I'm not. Right.
Right. Yep. It's very hard to do. I mean, I find myself sometimes, still comparing, and it is a thief of joy. It really is. So
I was recently at a conference where John Maxwell was speaking, and John Maxwell's a great speaker. He's wrote many books, and he had enough time for question and answers, which is really interesting. And there was only, maybe 1,500 people at the most that were at this conference. So a lot of people got the opportunity to ask a question. And this one individual got up there, and it was a female, and she said, "John, I want to be the next John Maxwell. I want to be just like you." And the first thing that John said was this. He goes, "Are you willing to do what I did in order to be like me? Are you willing to do what I did?" Mm-hmm. And then after he said that, he said, "John Maxwell's already taken. Be the best version of you."
Yeah, be yourself, because everybody else is taken.
Yeah,
I love that.
I do, exactly. I'm with you.
Yeah.
All right. So let's. Any other comments you want to make on Stoicism, or?
You have to do something. You have to, either it's reading the Bible, because this is a crazy world we're living in. It's always been a crazy world we're living in. I don't care, what part of the time you lived it. So you have to you can't just go through this by yourself, and one of our jobs, everybody's job is to, take whatever it is that we're learning. And I don't care what part of it's this part about Stoicism or return our life or whatever. I think we have to go out there and Kevin Elko has a great saying: don't go out looking for blessings. Go out and look to be a blessing. I believe that we have to, whatever it is that we're learning, whatever it helps us to get through a day, whatever it helps us to get through a tragedy, we have to be there for someone. And in order to, I would have never known this stuff about Stoicism if I didn't. A client of mine sent me something. I'm like, wow, where'd you get that? And so every day, 365 days of the year, more than likely, maybe not 365, maybe 355, I'm reading that every day. I'm journaling every day. And journaling doesn't have to write. It has to be one or two thoughts, And one thing that I do every day when I journal is, what am I grateful for? One thing. It doesn't have to be a whole list, Grateful for a nice hot cup of coffee that Lori made me this morning. Simple things like that. And that will lead to joy and to happiness.
Yeah. So when I talk to people that have morning routines, right? And I love my morning routine, and I can't live without my morning routine. But when I see people or hear people, they just get up and get going. It reminds me of a song by the Beatles, right? You're a musician.
There's John Lennon right behind us.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, it is John Lennon. But the lyrics go: got up, got out of bed, ran the comb across my head, found my way downstairs and had a cup. Looking up, I noticed I was late. Grabbed my coat, grabbed the hat, made the bus in second flat, and then found my way upstairs and had a smoke. And I can't remember the rest of it. But again, this is shot out of a cannon, right? Got up, got out of bed, combed their hair, had a cigarette, got on the bus, got to wherever they were going, had a cigarette. I mean, how could you be as productive as you possibly can be if you don't take time for yourself in the morning?
Yeah, you can't, and you don't. And again, that's why I think it's so important. I love what you're doing because people need to hear this kind of stuff. I don't know. Gosh, I shudder to think, how I would handle some of the things that, we have to handle without having that to go to. I mean, I look forward to that time. I really do. But if you got up and got out of bed, you wouldn't have to run a comb through your hair.
You are exactly right. And I'm with you. So my alarm goes off every morning at 5 a.m. Right. And so I try to get up at 5 a.m. But and it's easy to get out of bed now. It wasn't when I first started this, because I enjoy that time. I go from 5 o'clock, I get up. The first thing I do is I take my dog out for a walk. Then I make myself some coffee. Then I'm down in a comfortable chair and I'm reading or I'm listening and,
Yep.
Planning my day, taking care of everything up front so that when I leave the house, whatever time it is, I'm not, you know what? I can honestly say this as I'm getting older, I actually let people merge in front of me because I'm calm and because they may not be. And if I don't let them merge in front of me, they may do something that I don't want them to do. So,
Right. Yep.
So, well, let's do this. Let me ask you this. What do you've got as far as a personal growth plan? So you gave me some of the ideas of, what you do in the morning. But what kind of personal growth plan do you have in place?
Well, it's real simple. It's just always seeking, always learning, always trying to become a better version of myself and just keep reminding myself to live in the present. I actually believe that, I have two purposes in life, and that is to be in the present and have a huge impact on other people. That's it. And I got to constantly remind myself to be in the present. I'll never stop learning. I'll never stop reading. I'll never stop taking advice from other people. I'll never stop asking for advice from other people. So that's my personal growth plan.
We had two other people on the podcast, Randy Fortin and Bob Campana, and they both talked about the importance of. And Ben Norton said this too. They all talked about the purpose of asking people for help and going and surrounding yourself with the people that you see as successful or have a plan in place that you'd like to mimic.
Yeah. I mean, that's so important. I mean, because, you can, those three words, can you help me? I mean, those are three powerful words. And, let's face it, if that person isn't willing to help you, then, you don't want to be around that people, but most people are, and we have to reciprocate. We have to be willing to help others as well. Timothy and Paul, right? It's the same thing.
Yeah, I like that. Everybody should have a Timothy and everybody should have a Paul, right?
And here's the other thing too that I read from Buffett. We all have mentors, and I've had many mentors in my life, many mentors through different stages of my life. But I don't know if you've heard of this concept yet called reverse mentors. Having a mentor that is actually younger than you, right? And how we can learn from people that are younger than us. And I've got one in my office. I've got a kid in my office that knows a lot about a lot of different things than what I know about. And being humble enough to accept that. And I've always had reverse mentors. It doesn't bother me to ask somebody for advice. I mean, I was today. I was sitting with one of the best life insurance guys in the whole country. He's 43 years old. And I'm learning from him. And it didn't bother me whatsoever. So I think to have reverse mentors is also important too.
And you're saying that's Warren Buffett? He's the one that you heard, and I was thinking about Warren Buffett when you were talking earlier. Warren Buffett, he schedules more time for himself than he does for anything else.
He reads like 6 or 7 hours a day, right? Now, it's easy for someone to say, well, shit, he's Warren Buffett. He's got all the money in the world. He can do that. Well, that's not something that Warren Buffett just started doing when he had all the money in the world, right? It's, so yeah, I mean, Warren Buffett also says the best investment you can make is in yourself. It's the best investment you can make.
Yeah. So, that's a great question. Are people making personal investments in themselves, or do they feel that that's selfish? When in reality, not making a personal investment in yourself is selfish, right? Because you're not willing to put the time, effort, energy, the money, whatever it costs to grow personally, and you grow personally. Imagine the number of people that you serve, right? You talk about the number of people that you come in contact with on a daily basis. Um, Teachers impact the life of students. Coaches impact the lives of athletes. Pastors impact the life of their flock. Financial advisors impact the life of their clients. You need to look down. Parents impact the life of their kids. Are you impacting the life of your kids the right way?
Right.
How do you know if you are?
Yeah. Yeah. And that goes back to, like, just remind me, are you impacting your children? One of the questions you asked me was, what kind of leader are you? And how do you lead? And who did I learn to lead from? My dad, who just passed away Christmas Eve of this past year, my dad was, I think, had the best quality of any leader. He never yelled. He never screamed at us. He led by example. He cared more about the people that he was leading, us, more than he cared about himself. My dad wasn't a business owner. My dad didn't own his own business, but he taught me how to be a good parent. He taught me how to be a good spouse. And he didn't throw it down our throats. He just was a good parent. He was a good spouse. He was a great friend to people. And I think, to me, that's the type of leader I know I am. I lead by example. I'm a servant leader. And you got to put who you're leading, their interests, way in front of your interests.
And that is where humility and a servant's heart come in. Well, you said servant leader, right? So that's where humility comes in.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. What about core values? Do you have core values? Have you listed your core values? Can you give us an idea of what your core values are?
Yeah, I mean, there what I think are the main core values that we all should have. Family, faith, health, and I don't know if this is a core value, but impacting others. Being a blessing to other people. And that's where I was going back to. And I didn't think of the term. Having that inner scorecard, right? So I know that, I'm always keeping myself accountable. I know that inner scorecard always comes into play with any decision that I'm going to make. Is how's it going to impact my faith? How's it going to impact my family? How's it going to impact my health? How's it going to impact my clients? And keeping that inner scorecard and being authentic to myself. I think that's another core value is authenticity.
So how do we impact people to help them understand that they need to be authentic and they need to have a plan in place for personal growth so that they can raise, a rising tide lifts all ships?
Mm-hmm. I think first and foremost, maybe not first and foremost, is, you've heard me talk about this. If you want to have meaningful relationships with people, number one, you've got to know their story. Everybody has a story. And if you don't know their story, then you're not going to have an impact on them, right? And your story is different than mine, and mine is different than yours, and so on and so forth. And so I think in order to have authentic conversations with people, you have to know that person's story, right? And, don't be afraid to talk about your weaknesses. You will develop more deeper relationships with people by saying, hey, you know what, Bob? Oh my God, I'm really having a hard time with this or with that. Or I'll share an example with you. So this group that I belong to, I've got the way least amount of zeros behind my name than everybody in this place, right? And Lori and I were in a small group environment in San Diego. A person just sold their business to Petco. And I happened to sit next to the person that just sold his business from Petco to Petco. He moved from the East Coast to San Diego. We started talking. And, I'm asking questions. Here's the other thing. Don't dominate a conversation. Ask. So and I asked him a question. I said, man, your girls are at a pretty, impressionable age, and you move them while they're in high school from here to here. How did they handle that? He says, oh, my one girl handled it like a champ. The other one, it was the best thing that ever happened to her. I'm like, what do you mean by that? Well, she got bullied in high school, and she was having a very difficult time. I mean, severely bullied, severely depressed. So, now, this is the guy that just sold his business for, tens of millions of dollars. And he's telling me this. And then you know what? I'm like, well, I had a similar experience with one of my kids, being severely bullied, becoming anxious, and all of a sudden, I can't say his name, him and I, we had this bond. He didn't sit there and tell me, man, the minute that tens of millions of dollars hit my bank account, my wife went out and did this. No, he shared one of his weaknesses with me, and him and I developed such a great relationship from that. So getting back to your question is how do we teach this? We have to have authentic conversations. And, we have to first understand someone's stories. No one wants to know how successful you are. To be able to identify yourself by your weaknesses, you're going to create longer and lasting, deeper relationships by talking about those things. You'll have more in common because we all got bad stuff going on in our lives. And if we can help each other through that and relate to them and help them get through it, like, we both got some of the things we're saying were the exact same things that we both went through at the time. I just wanted my daughter back. It's like, oh my God, I felt the same way. I was lost. I didn't know what to do. I felt the same way. And man, that relationship was just solid at that point in time. We wouldn't have talked about that. Wouldn't have had a relationship, wouldn't have had as great a relationship as we have. So.
Now, my understanding too is when you sit down with clients or prospects, right, people that you don't have as clients, you have a quick 2-minute or so story about you, and then you ask for their story. Is that what happens?
Well, actually, my story comes at the very end, and it's a quick 2-minute story. But the process that we take people through is a discovery process. It's about 90 minutes long. We ask them questions in 7 areas. First and foremost, what are your values? Good question is, what was money like when you were growing up? What does money mean to you? What was your first impression of money? Right? And then what relationships are most important to you? What are your interests? What are your goals? Obviously, who are your other trusted advisors? And then we get to the money. Because to me, that's important. But again, it's all about understanding that person's story and what does money actually mean to that person. It's amazing. How the goalpost has been moved to how people determine their success, or how much money and how many cars and how many houses do you need and all of that. When is enough enough? You heard the story of Kurt Vonnegut. He was at a hedge fund manager's house in the Hamptons, and he's with another author. I forget the author's name. You would know it. And Kurt Vonnegut says to the other author, he says, you know what? This dude makes more money in 1 year than you made in your lifetime. And the other author said, yeah, you know what? But you know what I got that he doesn't have? Kurt Vonnegut said, what? And he goes, enough. So when is enough enough? And what's going to give you meaning and purpose? And there's an interesting study that in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, when they would ask kids, what were you going to school for? It was to find their purpose. After that, it was to become rich and famous. How shallow is that? But that's our society, man. That's what everybody wants. And when you get there, it ain't what it all cracked up to be. So
that's right. So we're pretty much running out of time. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a second here. I'm gonna thank my sponsors, and then I'm gonna come back to you, and I want you to Yeah, just give us your sage advice. So let me talk about our sponsors, and I'll be right back. All right.
Okay.
Well, I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank my sponsors, BCT Alarms. They're your local safety service provider. Reach out to Brian. He's got some great products to help you with your safety. I don't know if you noticed, we had some buffering going on during this recording, and I kept getting signals on my phone telling me that I've got an issue with my internet. And that's actually in one of the security packages that I have. So I notice I've got a little bit of problem with my internet today. Also want to thank Gold Country and Cool Cat Oldies, WOBL, WDLW, my good friends Renee and Gary Tillett. And then if you could see at the bottom of the page here, I've got a little banner going across. It says text lead now to 440-294-6200. If you do that, if you text lead now to 440-294-6200, you'll get on my distribution list, and you'll get notified when a new podcast comes out. Every Monday, I send out a video that has to do with one of the 13 virtues that I talk about all the time, and just want to help you become the best version of yourself, fully alive, living a 5-star life, with a personal growth plan so that you can lift others up as well. So now we're back to my friend Bob Bove. He's going to put a bow on this package and give us some sage advice.
Thanks, Robert. Well, I guess, the only thing that I can maybe say to younger people or anybody that, I think the key to happiness is having meaningful work, a purposeful life, authentic relationships, and being grateful. To me, that's what I've learned. That's what the research says. And that would be the sage advice that I want to leave everybody today. And Bob, I want to thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun. And like you said, I'm going to be surprised at how fast this hour flew by, and it did. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for joining us, Bob.